The footage recovered from my brother's GoPro ended at exactly 3:33 a.m. on August 15th, 2024. What follows is my account of the events that led to the disappearance of 4 people in the Balete forest and what I discovered during my search for answers. I write this not for sensation or glory, but as a warning to those who might dismiss the ancient warnings about what dwells in these sacred grounds. I'm Dr. Elena Santos, a cultural anthropologist specializing in Philippine folklore. My brother Marco was a veteran wildlife photographer. Our expedition into the Balete forest began as a documentary project about indigenous beliefs surrounding these ancient trees. We never expected to document our own destruction. The Balete forest lies 3 hours north of Manila, a place where massive ancient trees create permanent twilight even at noon. Local elders warned us about entering during the ghost month of August, but we dismissed their concerns as superstition. We were wrong. Catastrophically wrong. Our team consisted of 4 people: Marco with his cameras, myself, our local guide Pedro, and Dr. Sarah Chen, a botanist studying the parasitic nature of Balete trees. We made camp at the forest's edge on August 13th, planning to spend 5 days documenting the area. The first signs of wrongness appeared that very night. Our equipment began malfunctioning in specific patterns. Batteries would drain in seconds, but only when pointed at certain trees. The temperature would drop by 15 degrees in perfectly circular areas, then return to normal a few feet away. But most disturbing were the sounds. Children's laughter echoing from impossible distances, the snap of branches from trees that weren't moving, and what Pedro swore was the sound of someone walking upside down on the canopy above us. The local villagers had told us about the Aswang that supposedly lived in the forest's heart. A creature that could appear human, but was actually a massive shape-shifting monster that fed on human flesh. They spoke of it living in the largest and oldest Balete tree, using the tree's natural maze of aerial roots as its lair. We should have heeded their warnings about its intelligence, its patience, and its absolute mastery of deception. On the second day, we found the first evidence that we weren't alone. Massive footprints, nearly 2 feet long, appeared in places where the ground had been clear minutes before. They seemed to come from nowhere and lead nowhere. Sarah took samples of a black, oil-like substance that oozed from these prints, but her testing equipment short-circuited every time she tried to analyze it. That evening, the true horror began. We were setting up camp when Pedro spotted someone watching us from between the trees. A tall figure, unnaturally thin, its head cocked at an impossible angle. When Marco turned his camera toward it, the figure smiled. Not a human smile. Its face split vertically, revealing rows of needle-like teeth stretching down its throat. Pedro recognized what it was immediately and began reciting ancient prayers. But the creature was already moving. It walked with a jerking, insect-like motion, its joints bending backwards, growing taller with each step. By the time it reached the edge of our camp, it was over 12 feet tall, its skin turning black and glossy like wet leather. The attack was swift and calculated. It went for Pedro first, recognizing him as the one who knew how to fight it. I won't describe what it did to him. The sounds alone haunt my nightmares. Sarah tried to run, but the creature moved like liquid shadow, flowing between the trees. We found pieces of her equipment 2 days later, along with evidence suggesting she lived for several hours after being taken. Marco and I managed to reach our vehicle, but the forest itself seemed to turn against us. Roots burst from the ground, wrapping around the tires. Trees that had been hundreds of feet away suddenly stood directly in our path. The Aswang toyed with us, appearing as different people we knew. Our parents, colleagues, even as Pedro, begging for help with his voice. We made our last stand at an ancient Balete tree. Marco kept filming, documenting everything, even as the situation grew hopeless. The creature had herded us here deliberately, driving us toward its lair. The trunk of this massive tree was hollow, lined with what looked like a combination of web and nest, made from materials I refused to identify. The Aswang revealed its true form then, a grotesque fusion of human and spider-like features, but constantly shifting and changing. Its skin rippled with patterns that hurt to look at directly, and its movements defied physics. It spoke to us in voices we recognized, offering deals, promising to share ancient knowledge if we would just join it willingly. Marco pushed me toward a gap in the roots while he faced the creature. The last I saw of him was through a gap in the aerial roots. He was still filming, his camera capturing the Aswang's approach. I heard his final scream cut off with a wet sound that still echoes in my ears. I ran for 6 hours, though my GPS later showed I'd only covered 2 miles. The forest kept leading me in circles, but eventually I broke through to the village. The elders took one look at my face and knew. They began preparations immediately. Ancient rituals to keep the Aswang contained in its territory. The recovery team found Marco's GoPro 3 days later, wedged high in a tree far from where I'd last seen him. The footage shows something I missed in my panic. The Aswang wasn't just hunting us. It was performing a ritual of its own. The patterns of our pursuit, the placement of the bodies, even our final location at the Great Balete, all formed a massive symbol visible only from above. Local shamans who viewed the footage say we interrupted a ceremony that occurs every 100 years when the Aswang attempts to expand its territory. Our presence provided it with the sacrifices it needed, and the symbol it created now serves as a gateway to allow others of its kind to enter our world. The Balete forest has been officially closed, citing environmental concerns. The military maintains a perimeter, though they won't say why. But at night, you can hear it, the sound of something massive moving through the canopy, and children's laughter echoing from the darkness beneath the ancient trees. I'm sharing this account now because the 100th day approaches, the day the elders say the symbol will be complete. They've evacuated 3 villages already. The Balete trees near the forest's edge have begun to move, their roots creeping outward a few inches each night. And in nearby towns, people have reported seeing impossibly tall, thin figures standing motionless in the rain, their heads tilted at unnatural angles, watching. Marco's GoPro recorded one final image before its battery died, a vast dark shape descending from the canopy, its body covered in shifting patterns that seem to move even in the frozen frame. But it's the background that terrifies me most. Dozens of glowing eyes in the darkness, at varying heights, all oriented toward the camera. None of them were at heights possible for any known animal. This isn't just a story about what happened to us in the forest. It's a warning. The elders say the symbol is nearly complete, and more Aswang are coming. They've marked the area now. Every Balete tree for miles has become a potential gateway, and they remember my scent, my voice, my fears. They're patient hunters, content to wait weeks or months before taking their prey. I'm leaving the country tomorrow, but I know it won't matter. In my dreams, I hear them whispering in voices that sound like my brother's, promising that distance means nothing to them now. The Balete forest was just the beginning. They're spreading, and they're hungry.